What would you do if, on Christmas afternoon, while families were gathered and the world seemed to slow down for a few hours, as a medical helicopter landed to rescue a critically ill patient, you saw a woman in a blue mantle? But the paramedics on the ground swore there was no one in the field, a miracle of the Virgin Mary that no one expected. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Do you know that kind of person who believes only in what they can see, touch, measure? David Torres was exactly like that. 37 years old, 12 years flying medical helicopters in Colorado. Before that, he had been a paramedic for 6 years. He knew medical emergencies from every possible angle. His routine was precise. He woke up at 5:30 every morning, black coffee, a mental checklist while he showered. In the hangar at 6:45, always 15 minutes before the shift began. Sarah, his wife, worked as a nurse in the same emergency system. They had known each other for 15 years, married for 12. She understood his job because she lived under the same pressure, the same races against time. But there was one fundamental difference between them. Sarah believed, deeply. Every single day before David left for work, she held his hands and prayed. She asked for protection, asked for wisdom, asked that the Virgin Mary would watch over them. David tolerated it. He never mocked her, never complained. But he also never truly believed. It's beautiful that you have faith, he would say sometimes. But at the end of the day, what keeps me alive up there is training and experience. Sarah would just smile that smile of hers that meant, you don't understand yet, but one day you will. God acts through our hands, David. Your training, your experience, all of that comes from Him. David would kiss her forehead and head to work, thinking it was a beautiful way to see the world, even if it wasn't true. His colleagues respected David. Marcus Webb, the paramedic who flew with him most often, said he felt safer in the air with Torres than anywhere else. The man doesn't make mistakes, Marcus would comment. He's like a machine. But machines don't feel. And that was exactly what almost killed David that day. It was Christmas Day, December 25th. Blue sky without a single cloud. Pleasant temperature. The kind of day when flying was almost enjoyable, if it weren't for the nature of the job. In the hangar, small details gave away the holiday. A crooked wreath pinned to the metal wall. Christmas lights blinking faintly near the dispatch room, forgotten there since the week before. Nothing too festive, just enough to remind you that this wasn't an ordinary day. David was reviewing maintenance documents when the radio crackled. 3:30 in the afternoon. We have an emergency. David was already on his feet, moving toward the helicopter. Marcus appeared running from the other side of the hangar, grabbing his medical gear backpack. Male patient, 54 years old, possible heart attack. The dispatcher's voice continued. Rural location, ground ambulance on site, but patient in critical condition. Urgent air transport requested. David was already in the pilot's seat, initiating the startup sequence. Marcus came running from the other side of the hangar, still chewing the sandwich he had been eating. He grabbed his medical equipment bag without breaking stride. Estimated time 18 minutes, David transmitted, as the turbine began its warm-up cycle. Marcus settled into the rear seat, already organizing equipment. Emergency medications. He could do it in the dark, if he had to. At 3:34, they lifted off. The helicopter rose smoothly into the clear Colorado afternoon. David set a direct route, cruising altitude at 1,200 feet. From there he could see for miles in every direction, open fields in dry, muted winter tones, snow-covered mountains on the distant peaks, roads cutting through the landscape like scars. The flight passed in silence. Only the constant sound of the turbine and the blades slicing through the air. 16 minutes after takeoff, David spotted the ambulance. It was parked in an open, isolated field. It was winter. The land rested under the cold without crops, with low vegetation dormant for the season. David began his descent. He reduced speed, moving closer to the area where the ambulance was positioned. The ground paramedics were already there with the stretcher, waiting. The field below looked perfect for landing. David adjusted the angle of approach. 200 feet. That was when he saw it. Standing in the field, directly in the area where he planned to land, she wore a blue cloak that covered her head and fell all the way to her feet, touching the grass. Her hands were raised in front of her body, not in greeting, not in welcome, but in a warning gesture, urgent, insistent. And she was shaking her head negatively. No, not here. David blinked, thinking it might be some effect of the strong afternoon light. Maybe a reflection, maybe fatigue. He had flown 2 missions before lunch. But when he opened his eyes, she was still there. Solid. Real. Her gestures grew more emphatic with every passing second. Then she changed her gesture. She stopped simply shaking her head. She began to point, to the side, to another direction. Not here, there. The message was absolutely clear, even without a single word spoken. David felt something strange happen in his body. His heart raced. Sweat began to form on his forehead, despite the controlled temperature of the cockpit. His hands tightened on the controls. "Marcus," David said, keeping the helicopter hovering at 150 feet. "Do you see that woman?" Marcus leaned forward to look out the window. "What woman?" "In the field. Woman in a blue cloak. Right there, where I'm going to land." Silence for 3 seconds. "David," Marcus said, and there was something cautious in his voice. "There's no one down there. Just the ambulance, the paramedics, and the stretcher with the patient. No one else." David kept his eyes fixed on the woman. She continued gesturing. "Marcus, I am seeing someone. David, I'm looking at the same field you are. There is no one. There?" The woman in the blue cloak was now pointing to a spot about 50 meters to the north. Her gestures were so urgent that David felt something tighten in his chest. You know that feeling when you have to make a decision that goes against all logic? When every rational fiber of your brain screams one thing, but something deeper whispers another? David felt it, and for the first time in 12 years of flying, he did something he could not logically explain. "I'm going to land at an alternate point," he said, more to himself than to Marcus. "David," Marcus's voice was tense now. "What? Why? The field is perfect right there." "Just trust me," David said. Marcus was tense behind him. "David, man, what's going on?" "I'm seeing something you're not seeing." "That doesn't reassure me even a little." David moved the helicopter laterally, maintaining constant altitude, positioning himself over the spot the woman had indicated so insistently. The woman in the blue cloak made one last gesture. She brought her hands together in front of her chest, as if in prayer. Her eyes met David's through the windshield, and even at 50 meters away and 150 feet in altitude, David felt that look. It was not judgment. It was not command. It was pleading. It was love. It was, "Please, trust me." And then, in the space of 1 second to the next, she simply disappeared. She did not walk away. She was not covered by shadow. She simply stopped being there. One moment she was in the field, solid and present. In the next, the field was completely empty. David blinked rapidly 3 times, shook his head, looked again. Empty field. David descended the final 150 feet with hands that trembled slightly, something that had never happened in all his years of flying. The helicopter touched the ground softly, a perfect landing as always. Marcus was already opening the side door, jumping to the ground. "Team, here, bring the patient." David's eyes were not on the instruments. They were fixed on the field around them, searching for what? A woman who had vanished? A hallucination that had felt more real than anything he had ever seen? The ground paramedics ran in with the stretcher carrying the middle-aged man. David could see it even from inside the cockpit. Pale face, sweat soaking his shirt, one hand clutching his chest. While waiting, Marcus casually looked toward the original landing area, that perfect spot where David was supposed to have landed, where any pilot would have landed. He walked 3 steps toward the original landing point, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. And he stopped there, staring down, and he saw it. A cable, thick, black, winding through the low grass like a snake, a high-voltage cable. It was partially hidden by the vegetation, but it was definitely there. Exactly where David was going to land. "David," Marcus said, his face pale, "there's a high-voltage cable right there. Where you were going to land." David felt the blood run cold. The paramedics arrived with the stretcher. Marcus helped load the patient quickly, connecting the monitors, starting emergency care. "Pressure's dropping," Marcus said, working fast. "We need to go." David restarted the systems. His hands trembled slightly, but training took over. David flew. That was all he could do. Fly as fast as possible without making the patient even more unstable. Direct route, maximum safe speed, hospital in 17 minutes. But his mind wasn't completely on the flight. He was seeing a woman in a blue cloak. He was seeing her hands raised in urgent warning. He was seeing that look, pleading, "Love, please, trust me." David flew on autopilot. His hands worked the controls. His eyes scanned the instruments. But his mind was trapped in that field, seeing a woman in a blue cloak that no one else could see. They landed on the hospital helipad. The team was already waiting. Within minutes, the patient was transferred to the emergency room. Marcus returned. He found David still seated in the cockpit, staring at his own hands. "He's going to be fine. We got there in time." David didn't answer. "David," Marcus sat in the seat beside him, "that cable, if you had landed there—" "I know." "The skids would have come down right on the cable. Energized cable. The entire metal structure of the helicopter would have been electrocuted." "I know." "How did you know?" Marcus asked. "How did you know you couldn't land there?" David opened his eyes. He looked at Marcus, his partner for years, a man who trusted him with his life every time they took off. "Do you believe in miracles?" David asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother was very religious, Portuguese, a devout Catholic. She prayed the rosary every day. When I was little, she used to tell me that the Virgin Mary protects those who need to be protected, that sometimes we're saved without even knowing we were in danger." David felt something tighten in his throat. "I saw someone," he said. "A woman in a blue cloak. She was standing exactly where that cable was, waving for me not to land there, urgently, pointing to where I should land." Marcus did not laugh. He did not doubt. He simply took out his phone, searched for a few seconds, and showed an image of the Virgin Mary, exactly like the woman David had seen. "My God," David whispered. "You were protected," Marcus said softly. "All of us were." David couldn't respond. He just stared at the image, feeling something break inside him. "I need to go home," he finally said. Sarah was in the kitchen when he arrived. She turned, smiling, but the smile vanished when she saw his face. "David, what happened?" He hugged her. Tight, as if she were the only solid thing in a world that no longer made sense. "You were right," he said. "All along you were right." Sarah pulled him to the table. "She saved me," David said, and felt tears burn his eyes for the first time in years. "The Virgin Mary, she appeared to me today. She showed me where not to land, where there was a high-voltage cable." "If I had landed where I planned," David said, his voice breaking, "Marcus wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. And that man wouldn't be either. Marcus couldn't see, the paramedics couldn't see, but I saw. She was there, Sarah. She was there." Sarah placed her hands on his face. Her own tears began to fall. "Tell me everything," she whispered. Sitting at the kitchen table, he recounted every detail. 3 lives, David said, his voice breaking. If I had ignored what I saw, and if I had trusted only the training, only what seemed logical. She heard you all those mornings. All those prayers asking for protection. The Virgin Mary heard you, Sarah. No, Sarah gently corrected. She always heard me. But today was the day you needed to see her. You needed to know. She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. It was a Christmas miracle, one of those that make no noise, don't appear on the news, but happen exactly when they need to happen. David let the tears fall. He didn't try to hide them. He didn't try to be strong. He just cried, and for the first time since he was 12 years old and his father had died. He cried for all the years of arrogance, of certainty, of believing that only the visible, the measurable, the logical had value. He cried because he had been wrong, fundamentally, completely wrong. And he cried out of gratitude, gratitude for having been saved when he didn't deserve to be saved. When he didn't even believe there was anything there to save him, on a day when the whole world talks about hope, but few truly see it happening. Sarah held him while he cried. She didn't say anything. She was just there, as she always had been. That night David didn't sleep. Lying in bed beside Sarah, he stared at the ceiling in the dark. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since he was very young, he prayed. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for showing me that there is more than I can measure. No voice answered, no light appeared. But David felt something, a peace that came from somewhere beyond himself, and that was enough. In the days that followed, David returned to work. He flew missions, he saved lives. Externally, everything seemed normal, but internally, everything had changed. 6 weeks after the incident, on a Sunday morning, David did something Sarah never imagined she would see. "Shall we go to church today?" he asked during breakfast. Sarah almost dropped her coffee cup. "What?" "Church, the one you go to sometimes. Can I go with you?" Sarah studied his face, searching for signs of a joke. She found none. "Are you sure?" "No," David admitted, "but I need to go anyway." They arrived 15 minutes before the service began. The church was small, welcoming, time-worn wooden pews, simple stained-glass windows, and in front, to the left of the altar, a statue of the Virgin Mary, blue mantle, hands outstretched. David stopped when he saw her. His entire body became still. It was her, exactly as he had seen her in that field. They sat on a pew in the middle. David didn't know when to kneel, when to stand, when to sit. Sarah guided him discreetly, touching his arm, indicating with gentle gestures. When the priest spoke about the Virgin Mary, about how she appears in moments of greatest need, how she protects and guides those who are in danger, David felt tears burning his eyes once again. After the Mass, as people were leaving, David stayed. Sarah waited patiently by his side. When the church was almost empty, David stood up. He walked over to the statue of the Virgin Mary. He stood there, looking at that marble face that somehow perfectly captured the expression he had seen that day. Serenity, power, love. And he whispered, "Thank you for saving me, for saving Marcus, for saving that man. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't believe, even when I thought there was nothing beyond what I could measure and control." He paused, searching for the right words. "I will never doubt again, and I will spend the rest of my life grateful for this." Sarah held his hand as they left the church. The morning sun was strong, warming the spring air of Colorado. "Hey, how do you feel?" she asked. David thought for a long moment. "Different," he finally said. "As if I had spent my entire life looking through a microscope, seeing only what was on the slide. And suddenly someone made me lift my head and realize that there is an entire universe all around." Before finishing, I want to invite you to be part of our prayer community for the Virgin Mary, a space of faith and hope where people from all over the world come together to pray and share graces received. If you feel in your heart the desire to be part of this chain of prayer, click below and become a channel member today, and come pray with us. And look, if you made it this far, all the way to the end of David's story, do one thing for me. Write in the comments, blue mantle, the words that describe who saved 3 lives in that field. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read blue mantle in the comments, I will know that one more person believes that miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Write in the comments about a miracle you have already witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs renewed hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.